There's a little well-known niche inside of real estate investing that could really cause your business to boom fast. You know, a lot of people are focused on big commercial property because they believe a lot of doors is what they need. And there's also a lot of people focused on single family homes because they think it's a great way to start. But in actuality, there's kind of like a category that not a lot of people talk to, go after, but can make you huge profits. That is land. But there are several things that you need to avoid so that way you can maximize in this niche without having to lose your shirt. And so today we're going to talk about 5 to 6 things that you need to avoid, that you absolutely have to avoid if you don't want to lose your shirt when investing in land. Now, the first thing you want to avoid is having power lines on the property. Now, this can be done like 2 different ways, okay? So when you figure out a seller wants to sell a piece of land and you're looking it up on the GIS, you might see it on the map that there's power lines that run through the property. If you do see this, be very cautious, okay? There's 2 ways that this will be done with these power companies. The first way, which is the best way, is the power companies will have a lease in place to lease, this portion of the land from the landowner, meaning the power company is paying them to have one of those towers or multiple of those towers run through and be placed on their property. And now you have an asset. You essentially have this company that's leasing a portion of your land so you can use the remainder of it to do their business. Perfect. Okay. But then there's also this thing called an easement. Okay. An easement is a mutual agreement between the landowner and someone else who's not the landowner, that doesn't have any responsibility to the property, that doesn't have to maintain this particular thing. But this easement typically allows them to use your property at their own will, come onto your property at their own will, and not pay you anything. This is not good for landowners because now you kind of lose your privacy, right? You lose your privacy, but also no one wants to be restricted to having these power lines going down the middle of their property forever, because these power lines put off a lot of radiation. So typically a lot of people who want to buy land to build their houses, or to develop, they'll stay away from land that has these power lines because nobody wants to put themselves, on the roadway to cancer. Okay. So you want to avoid properties with power lines running through them, but only if there's an easement. If they're willing to pay you for that land, hey, great, do your calculation on having rental property and do your calculation that way based off of, what you should be buying, and paying for it based off of what you're going to be collecting every month. The second thing you need to avoid is cliffs or slopes. Okay. Literally, I just saw online the other day in California, a $5 million house sliding off the edge of a cliff. You want to avoid having steep slopes or cliffs. Okay. And the main reason for that is because the earth moves. Okay. The earth moves. And so even if it perks and it is buildable and you can buy a house there, typically you're going to see either an increase in how much it costs to build on that land because of the strict, foundation requirements built, need to be there to have a house built, or you're going to see a higher maintenance cost over time to keep that house there. Okay. And when that's the case, it's just not good for the insurance purposes. Okay. Whenever you see houses on steep cliffs or slopes, your insurance is always going to be through the roof because they know your house is just sliding over time. Okay. So you want to make sure that you adjust accordingly and avoid, steep slopes and cliffs with your land purchase. Thirdly, which is probably about the most important, you want to be sure that the land perk. Does the land perk? Okay, let's break this down. A perk is simply a soil test. You can either have an engineer come out or you can have your city or local county come out and they can do a soil test. Essentially, this soil test will see is if your land will hold and disintegrate waste or if your land will not, meaning water will rise to the top, or in this case, waste will rise to the top. See, they're doing this soil test because if you're outside of county lines, then you'll have to put a septic tank inside of the ground. And if your soil can't hold that waste for long enough to disintegrate the waste and turn it back into soil, then it's going to essentially rise to the top, and that's an environmental issue. Okay, they don't want that. So if your land can't perk and is outside of county lines, you won't be able to build a home there. That pretty much makes your home, like your land, not valuable at all, because the main purpose of land these days is to build something on it. Build a commercial property, build apartments, or build a home on it, or build a development. Now you might be able to do something else, like put a farm there, or do something else, but it might not go well for you, because once again, the land will not soak up that water. So you're going to end up having a lot of water rise to the top. So even if you try to farm there, your plants are going to get root rot and those kind of things, essentially making that land worthless. Now, some key signs will be in the GIS. Okay, will be in the geographical information system or somewhere in the county data. If there's already been a perk test in the last 5 to 7 years, it might just say failed perk test somewhere in those tax records. Okay, if it doesn't have a perk test on file, before you close, you need to get one. Sometimes it'll cost you between $100 and $300 to get that done, and it could take about 2 to 3 weeks to get that done. So make sure you have enough time in your contract, in your due diligence period, to make sure that's done. The fourth thing that you need to avoid is not getting a survey. Okay, we're buying land. Okay, so how can you know how much land you're buying if you don't actually get a real survey? Now, when you're talking to the seller of land, they might already have a survey of the property. You just need to see when that survey was, and that might work for you. Okay, you can get that survey from the seller, okay, and then actually walk the property from each corner to corner to make sure it's staked. Okay, and when you do that, if it's not staked, you probably want to get it resurveyed, because at this time, before you close on the property, you really want to make sure that no one is encroaching on your property. For example, if someone has their barn or their shed on your property, over time, they could naturally eat away at your line. It's happened several times before, or someone could be using your property, without you knowing. When I purchased our property in the back, one of the neighbors actually had a deer stand on our side of our property. So I had to politely let him know, this is our property right here. This is where the line is. You're gonna have to move your stand 3 feet back. There's no problem when you have a survey, but you absolutely need a survey so you can know exactly what you're buying. Lot lines do change over time. Development is always happening. Rezoning is always happening. Buying and selling is always happening. So you want to know exactly what you're buying, not just believing what someone says, to you over the phone when it comes to you buying land. Okay, because you think you could have 2 acres, but you end up having 1 acre, 0.2, and that's a big difference when we're talking about money. Next, you want to make sure you're not buying any R value land. Okay, this is what that means. Every property should have road frontage. Okay, road frontage allows you to drive off, on a main road, come down a driveway, and get to your property. Okay, if the property has R value, sometimes it'll actually say near and then an address. This means that the land does not have road frontage, meaning you will have to go through someone else's property in order to get to yours. This kind of land does not have any value because you can't actually access the road from the property. Okay, you can't access that property from the road. This land has no valuable. Most of the time you cannot put a septic tank there, you can't put a well there, or you won't even be able to, access city hookups, because once again, if city runs their lines down the road and you have to go through somebody else's property, you won't be able to get it. You won't be able to, it won't be buildable. So avoid R value or near land, okay? And then lastly, you want to avoid buying marshlands, okay? Marshlands are, just land that typically holds water, or unless you're buying 1,000 acres. Yeah, if you're buying 1,000 acres and 20 acres of it is marshlands, hey, I get it. But you want to make sure that you avoid buying wetlands. At the end of the day, we need, as real estate investors, we need property that we can add value to. Okay, we need property that we can develop. We need property that we can, that we can split off and resell and make a profit. We need land that we can rent to farmers and to athletic companies and those kind of things, so we can make money. And realistically, marshland doesn't do too much of that. Hey, I'm not saying that you can't get a hunting lease, maybe, depending on what you got growing in your marshland, but that's very slim pickings. And realistically, if you only have one way to make money, with the property, that's not enough to actually sustain you consistently, over your lifetime of ownership with the property. So these are a few things that I've learned over time about buying land, making hundreds of thousands of dollars with land, that I suggest that you avoid, that I purposely tell my team to avoid. And we've seen success when we've made sure that properties perk, when we make sure we're not buying a wetland or marshland, when we've made sure we're not buying R value land and we got to walk through the neighbor's yard, and next thing you know, the neighbor's threatening us with a gun, so we can't even get on our property, or we can't even connect to city sewage, or we buy a piece of property that doesn't even perk. We can't build anything on it. Now we just got trees. I'm telling you, if you'll follow these simple things, if you'll avoid these simple things, you'll be able to make money inside of land where a lot of people are not concentrating and making money at. You'll dominate your market because nobody's marketing to landowners, and you'll make more money than everybody else because builders absolutely need land, so that way we can catch up with the housing shortage that the United States is facing right now. Okay, so look, if you guys want to learn more about real estate investing, go ahead and like, subscribe, and this right here will start popping up in your feed more. Have an amazing day. Peace.